So one of the first things you have to do when you decide that you're going to make a feather stick is to decide on the material. And one of the materials that I choose in New England is white pine. It's very easy to carve. And the whole idea behind a feather stick is to make shavings that basically are going to collect at the base of your material in a cluster. Now the cluster allows for a lot of surface area for fire to get a hold of. So that's what we're striving for. Now you could simply make a feather stick without having to split wood out of a smaller piece of material, and we're going to do that and demonstrate that. But a lot of times when you go through the woods and things are damp, you're going to be forced to take a larger piece of material, split it down to access drier material within it, and then utilize that piece of material to do your feather sticking. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take, the first step is we're going to baton this larger piece. So if you've never batoned anything before, basically batoning is the act of taking a blade and splitting a piece of material, and you're using another piece of material such as a mallet to basically force the blade through that piece of wood you're trying to split. It doesn't have to be a knife, it could be an axe or what have you, but it's basically, you know, three elements here. Something to hit with, something to be split, and something that's going to do the splitting. So to get our material split down, sometimes it won't always follow the grain, it'll split out early as it's doing here, but you'll have to trim it. Just keep trimming it. And when you're batoning, sometimes when you get to a point where you feel that there's very little resistance and you're getting to the bottom, you can simply take your knife and twist it and it'll split that open. Okay, we're going to split it one more time here, and I have a crack on here. I'm just going to follow it. Seems to be a natural way for it to split. And then I'm going to split this one more time, and because this particular one is a little on the narrow side, I'm going to leave one side, the bark side, on here, even though because I find that it's not too damp. So that's sort of what you're going to start with. Okay? Now, the actual process by way of feather sticking requires you to take the piece of material, and it should be about a foot or 18 inches in length, or something like that, just so that you can get some decent length on it. You're going to put one end down on a secure place and simply take your knife using this sort of hand grip. You can use your thumb up here, but I find that you have a lot less control in this particular technique, in this particular act of making a feather stick. So I grip it with my thumb on the inside and then just use my upper body to sort of push it along, keeping my elbow pretty much locked. And that way the only thing you really have to worry about is taking the angle of the knife and changing it as you proceed down the woods to keep that curl. So you're making long, smooth curls. The longer the better. And you can angle your knife a little bit. See how I angled it, and they move off to the side. You can also change it the other way. It's a little bit harder to get the curl to roll over the other way. The problem with that technique is that by the time you get down here, your knuckles are into your stable platform and your curl is still way up here. So if you get down to that point and it's still rolling, then you shift a little bit, and then the curl is still on the outside, and you're still able to complete the pass all the way down. Now the very cool thing about all of this is that you're developing knife skills. You're getting a feel of your knife and the control of your knife, and it really, really, really helps to have a sharp knife. use of that sort of key. Apologize for the wind. All right, so then when you're doing your curls and you find that you're in the same spot over and over, you can roll the stick to one side or the other, okay, to keep the curls thinner or wider depending on what you're trying to do. If they're thinner, they're going to catch a spark or a flame much easier. If they're wider, they're going to keep that flame a little bit longer, and that heat's going to be a little bit higher as a result. So just keep going back and forth. You know, whenever you're sitting around the campfire at night, just get a stick and practice. It's just like I said, if for no other reason, it's a good way to practice your knife skills and your control. And then you can also try it with a not so sharp knife and then sharpen it and see how much easier it is. Now any curls that fall off, okay, you can easily just keep aside and add it to the base of your kindling. And we're going to demonstrate that here in a little bit. So I'm going to give a close-up to the GoPro and see how that takes it in. And then I'll give you a close-up over here to my other camera. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, if it'll focus it or not. I have a new camera today that I'm working with, and it's a bit of a, not just a bit of a learning curve, but it's also a lot different in terms of field of view, etc. So I apologize as to how this video is going to look, because it's going to be the first one with a new camera. Okay, so just keep going back and forth, and I'll finish this stick up and we'll get back to you as soon as we're done. So as you can see, we created a lot of surface area, and that's what fire really loves, especially when you're trying to have a successful start. Now you notice this one is still on the stick, okay, still attached, and you can certainly use it that way, and you know, you still have all this material that you can place in the fire afterwards. But I like to make a bunch of little ones, and this was actually attached to the bottom of another stick, and then as it gets too narrow I break it off and then start another one farther up on the stick. And then you make a pile of them. You make 4 or 5 of them, maybe 10 of them, and then you can use 2 or 3 to start your fire, and then you have others alongside in case the fire is extra stubborn or you need them for another time. And the cool thing about these feather sticks is that your kindling, your small kindling, can be slightly damp, and these will help dry them off in the process to help get your fire started. Okay, so I'm going to show a quick fire lay in a minute, but first I want to show you how to just make a feather stick from just a piece of stock without splitting it. So hang in there with me. I've shown you how to make a feather stick out of a split piece of wood, and you would do that normally because the outside of the wood was relatively damp and you couldn't really use it. Now I'm going to show you how to use just a straight piece of stock that hasn't been split, but obviously this is a piece of eastern white pine. It fell down in the woods. It looks like it could be slightly punky in the middle, but it feels pretty hard on the outside and it feels relatively dry. So we're going to take a piece of basically downed white pine without treating the outside in any way, and see if we can make a feather stick from it, just using it as is. Now the key here is, and this applies to whether or not you use a piece of stock right off the bat without splitting it, or you have to split down to a piece. The pieces that I choose should be relatively free, okay, of any branches or knots. If you see a stub on the outside indicating there was a branch there, then you know there's going to be a knot inside, and it's going to make it that much more difficult to feather stick. Now if you have one at one end that you're not going to use, that's fine, but if it's somewhere in the area of where you're going to carve, you need to look for an alternate piece of material, or just be prepared that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get a nice smooth feather stick. So that's sort of key to success. All right, so I noticed that on this piece, for instance, there's one little branch here and here. So I'm just turning it around because it's all pretty much clear from here. And I'm just going to take the back of my knife and just scrape it a little bit just to clean it up just a little bit. And again, if your knife has a nice 90-degree edge on the back, it makes the job a little bit easier. Okay, so again, same process, upper body, one nice smooth motion all the way down. It feels a little bit chunkier on this one. It could be just because I'm going through the outside, which is a little bit more brittle. And I'm rolling it almost like a 1/16 of an inch. So you see my curls rolling over a little bit to each side. Now I'm going back the other way, going back and forth on it. Okay, so I'm pretty happy right now with the consistency of the grain. It feels good. It doesn't take a whole lot of adjustment on my knife to keep the curl consistent. My knife seems to be doing very well. It's relatively sharp. It does need a sharpening, which will be the next video. All right, I'm just going to keep doing this until it's done, and I'll be right back with you, okay? Okay, that looks pretty good for me. I mean, that's the type of cluster I'm striving for, okay? Sort of looks like Phyllis Diller, and if you're too young to know who Phyllis Diller is, Google her. You'll get my point. All right. So let's just show you how, at this point, we would use them in a fire lay. I'll be right back with you. Okay, so this is going to be just a quick abbreviated explanation as to how to use the feather sticks once you've got them prepared. Normally I would have all of my kindling spread out all around the fire here, ready to go. I'm just going to show you how the process starts. Our next video is going to get into the whole entire process of setting up a fire. So the main purpose here today is just to show you the execution portion of the feather stick and its use and how effective it really is. Okay, so kind of a normal setup here. I usually just start with a few pieces of birch bark at the base of my fire. I'm just going to use a few here. It's a fairly dry day here. Some of the material is a little damp, but if you pick and choose today, it seems to be like you can get drier things that'll work much better. All right, so then I just have a few pieces of birch there. Then I'm going to lay my feather stick sort of on the back side of it, covering it about half and half. Then I'm just going to make some birch residue here with my knife. I'll put a link to this the other video about birch tinder and why I like it so much. All right, and then I'm just going to utilize another piece of birch here to transfer the flame over once it starts. And there's the ignition. Houston, we have ignition. I'm going to transfer the fire over to my little pile of birch here and then introduce my feather stick to it. And look how well that catches. Now that's just two of them. And you can see clearly if you had, some more kindling like this on top that was just a little on the damp side, that feather stick really will dry it out in a hurry because of the heat. And then, like I said, you just keep more around the edge of the campfire in case your fire needs a little coaxing, or you need to start it up the next morning or whatever. So if you're sitting around the campfire and you're looking for something to do, working on a feather stick, it'll help sharpen your knife skills. It'll prep you for your next fire. If you have any questions, please by all means leave them in the comment section. Get out there and try some of this stuff and train, and we'll see you next time. Be safe, take care, bye-bye.